Whoa, I am well distracted.
Be careful to draw your curtains this evening when you get home.
So, Frank O'Hara and poetry. Doopy doop. Oh, they were amazing. Congratulations to the filmmakers so far, and Jamie, what an extraordinary selection. Thank you to Gareth and Calvin for having us again, just to reiterate what Chris said earlier. Such a pleasure to be reading someone else's work. And also to be reading to people who perhaps aren't sick of poetry, although we will do our best to change that. So Frank O'Hara is someone I think everyone knows really well, and so I took rather the opposite tack from Chris and thought not to include much biography. In retrospect, perhaps I should have. He lived in New York and he was killed by a June buggy. It's pretty much the salient facts of his life. He was deeply involved in the art scene.
He was curator at MoMA.
He was curator at MoMA. I could talk about his work, I think, for an hour. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to talk about his work for a minute, so why I find it so interesting personally. I think there's a bit of a misnomer with O'Hara that people love his work so much because it strikes them immediately that it's incredibly personal and intimate. Actually, I think O'Hara is a continuation of the best of the modernist tradition. It's actually highly sensitive to cinema, and I don't think he's doing with his first-person narrative, rapid poems what perhaps people think he is. James Joyce was really sensitive to the rise of cinema and what cinema did to the arts and how it actually affected literature. One thing Joyce said, and B.S. Johnson echoed it a little bit later on, is that why would a novelist, let alone a poet, describe the scenes of the world? Why would they describe a fighter jet, I think was the phrase he used, when cinema can just show it? Why use a medium for something that it doesn't do naturally? And I think O'Hara is highly sensitive to this, something that possesses a lot of modernism and modernist works. I actually think what he's doing by creating these poems from a first-person narrative is using the speed and the cadence of discussion, of colloquial conversation, to distance himself from the world that he's in, to show it better. I think his eye is an ironized eye, that he tries to live the speed and the smells and the sound and the rhythm of New York by creating an ironic version of himself, a poetic Frank O'Hara, as Chris said earlier. So we're just going to read a small selection, hopefully that'll come through, because he's very much an exception that proves the rule to me. I find most first-person narrative poetry which dominates the UK scene to be highly tedious, whereas I think O'Hara, while he's using the same materials, is actually really electric and exciting. Thank you.
Ave Maria. Mothers of America, let your kids go to the movies. Get them out of the house so they won't know that what you're up to. It's true that fresh air is good for the body, but what about the soul? That grows in darkness, embossed in silvery images. And when you grow old, as grow old you must, they won't hate you. They won't criticise you. They won't know. They'll be in some glamorous country they first saw on a Saturday afternoon or playing hooky. They may even be grateful to you for their first sexual experience, which only cost you a quarter and didn't upset the peaceful home. They will know where candy bars come from and gratuitous bags of popcorn, as gratuitous as leaving the movie before it's over with a pleasant stranger whose apartment is in the heaven on earth building near the Williamsburg Bridge. Oh mothers, you will have made the little tykes so happy, because if nobody does pick them up in the movies, they won't know the difference. And if somebody does, it'll be sheer gravy, and they'll have been truly entertained either way, instead of hanging around the yard or up in their room hating you prematurely, since you won't have done anything horribly mean yet except keeping them from the darker joys. It's unforgivable, the latter, so don't blame me if you won't take this advice and the family breaks up and your children grow old and blind in front of a TV set, seeing movies you wouldn't let them see when they were young.
Steps. How funny you are today, New York, like Ginger Rogers in Swing Time and St. Bridget's steeple leaning a little to the left. Here I have just jumped out of a bed full of V-days. I got tired of D-days, and blue you there still accepts me foolish and free. All I want is a room up there and you in it. And even the traffic halts so thick is a way for people to rub up against each other. And when their surgical appliances lock, they stay together for the rest of the day. What a day. I go by to check a slide and I say that painting's not so blue. Where's Lana Turner? She's out eating and Garbo's backstage at the Met. Everyone's taking their coat off so they can show a ribcage to the rib watchers, and the park's full of dancers in their tights and shoes in little bags who are often mistaken for worker-outers at the West Side Y. Why not? The Pittsburgh Pirates shout because they won, and in a sense we're all winning. We're alive. The apartment was vacated by a gay couple who moved to the country for fun. They moved a day too soon. Even the stabbings are helping the population explosion, though in the wrong country. And all those liars have left the UN. The Seagram building's no longer rivaled in interest, not that we need liquor, we just like it. And the little box is out on the sidewalk next to the delicatessen, so the old man can sit on it and drink beer, and get knocked off of it by his wife later in the day while the sun is still shining. Oh God, it's wonderful to get out of bed and drink too much coffee and smoke too many cigarettes and love you so much.
The book Steve and I are reading from is called Lunch Poems. It's kind of an iconic City Lights edition from 1964, and it collects nearly 10 years, a selection really of 10 years of O'Hara's work. And there's one thing I think that O'Hara liked as much as art, and that was lunch. And what he'd do is he'd take his break from the gallery and he'd walk around New York. And in those days, the typewriter stores, the Olivetti stores, used to have display typewriters on the streets. And O'Hara would walk around for a while, have some lunch, and he'd put some paper in these sample machines and he'd write poetry on them. And a lot of these poems were written in that way. And this poem, one of his most famous poems, called The Day Lady Died, describes just that, walking around the streets of New York, and it comes back to him the moment when he was told that Billie Holiday had died. It's 12:20 in New York, a Friday, 3 days after Bastille Day. Yes, it is 1959, and I go get a shoe shine because I will get off the 419 in East Hampton at 7:15 and then go straight to dinner, and I don't even know the people who will feed me. I walk up the muggy street beginning to sun and have a hamburger and a malted and buy an ugly New World writing to see what the poets in Ghana are doing these days. I go onto the bank and Miss Stillwagon, first name Linda, I once heard, doesn't even look up my balance for once in her life. And in the Golden Griffin, I get a little Verlaine for Patsy with drawings by Bonnard, although I do think of Hesiod, translated by Richmond Lattimore, or Brendan Behan's new play, or Le Balcon or Le Negre of Jenny, but I don't. I stick with Verlaine after practically going to sleep with quandariness. And for Mike, I just stroll into the Park Lane liquor store and ask for a bottle of Strager, and then I go back where I came from to 6th Avenue and the tobacconist in the Ziegfeld Theatre and casually ask for a carton of Golosses and a carton of Picayunes and a New York Post with their face on it. And I am sweating a lot by now and thinking of leaning on the John Doe in the 5 spot while she whispered a song along the keyboard to Mal Waldron, and everyone and I stopped breathing.
Mary Desty's Ass. In Bayreuth once, we were very good friends of the Wagners, and I stepped in once for Isadora so perfectly she would never allow me to dance again. That's the way it was in Bayreuth. The way it was in Hackensack was different. There, one never did anything, and everyone hated you anyway. It was fun. It was clear you knew where you stood. In Boston, you were never really standing. I was usually lying. It was amusing to be lying all the time for everybody. It was like exercise. It means something to exercise in Norfolk, Virginia. It means you've been to bed with a Negra. It is well exercised. The only difference is it's better than Boston. I was walking along the street of Cincinnati and I met Kenneth Koch's mother, fresh from the Istanbul Hilton. She liked me and I liked her. We both liked Istanbul. Then in Waukegan, I met a furniture manufacturer and it wiped out all dreams of pleasantness from my mind. It was like being pushed down hard on a chair. It was like something horrible you hadn't expected, which is the most horrible thing. And in Singapore, I got a dreadful disease. It was amusing to have bumps, except they went into my veins and rose to the surface like Vesuvius. Getting cured was like learning to smoke. Yeah, I always loved Baltimore. The porches which hurt your ass. No, they were the steps, where you have a wet ass anyway, if they'd only stopped scrubbing. And Frisco, where I saw Tumanova, the baby ballerina, except she looked like a cow. I didn't know the history of ballet yet, not that it taught me much. Now, if you feel like you want to deal with Tokyo, you've really got something to handle. It's like Times Square at midnight. You don't know where you're going, but you know. And then in Harborne I knew how to behave. It was glorious. That was love sneaking up on me through the snow, and I felt it was because of all the postcards and the smiles and kisses and the grunts. That was love, but I kept on travelling.
This is one of 5 poems in Lunch Poems called Poem. O'Hara wrote that much and so quickly, and a lot of these poems were sent in letters to people that he didn't even bother to title them. So, Poem. The apocryphal story of this is that it was written in a cab through New York on the way to a party. Lana Turner's collapsed. I was trotting along and suddenly it started raining and snowing, and you said it was hailing, but hailing hit you on the head hard, so it was really snowing and raining, and I was in such a hurry to meet you, but the traffic was acting exactly like the sky, and suddenly I see a headline: Lana Turner has collapsed. There is no snow in Hollywood, there is no rain in California. I've been to lots of parties and acted perfectly disgraceful, but I never actually collapsed. Oh, Lana Turner, we love you, get up.
Yesterday, down at the canal. You say that everything is very simple and interesting. It makes me feel very wistful, like reading a great Russian novel does. I'm terribly bored. Sometimes it is like seeing a bad movie. Other days, more often, it's like having an acute disease of the kidney. God knows it has nothing to do with the heart. Nothing to do with people more interesting than myself. Yak, yak. That's an amusing thought. How can anyone be more amusing than oneself? How can anyone fail to be? Can I borrow your 45? I only need 1 bullet, preferably silver. If you can't be interesting, at least you can be a legend. But I hate all that crap. Cheers.
Thank you.